Yesterday, Dricus du Plessis made history for mixed martial arts in the country, becoming South Africa's first UFC world champion in the middleweight division. He secured his most important victory in his 21st victory against the now dethroned Sean Strickland. MMA commentator Simon Stevens joins us now to chat about the win and what it means for South Africa. A very good evening and welcome to Newzroom Afrika. Thanks for being our guest. How big is this for mixed martial arts in the country and even on the continent?
Well, it's really huge. I mean, it seems that it's taken a lot of people by surprise in South Africa, but I think people in the industry of combat sports in our country don't necessarily see it that way. If you think about in the past, EFC launched in 2009. I remember going to some MMA events in Durban around 2006. So, South Africa's adopted mixed martial arts a lot earlier than many other more established markets these days. And we've had some successes with a lot of fighters going into the UFC, guys like Don Madge, guys like Gareth McClelland, Trevor Prangley many years ago. But without a doubt, I mean, a lot of people were very surprised when Dricus entered the top 10 rankings of the middleweight division in the UFC, and even more surprising to become a world champion. It is absolutely unprecedented in the recent memory of South African combat sports, in a stunning achievement.
You mentioned how many people were surprised. He only made his promotional debut in UFC in 2020. He's had quite an incredible last couple of years, hasn't he?
He has indeed. I mean, he cemented it with the EFC. He became the promotion's very early two-divisional champion. He was really quite dominant. And then going on to fight for KSW, a very huge European promotion, and knocked out their champion, Roberto Soldic, and lost on the rematch. I think Gareth McClelland and Roberto Soldic remain the only two people in Dricus du Plessis' entire professional MMA career to ever defeated him. That's how truly incredible he is. So he's fought for international promotions overseas for quite a few years before this run at the UFC. He remains unbeaten in the UFC on that title contendership before getting the belt. But he was also one of South Africa's youngest K1 world kickboxing champions before he transitioned into mixed martial arts. So he had already achieved really quite amazing things before he even transitioned into mixed martial arts all those years ago.
Yeah, I think it was only in 2017 when he won that world kickboxing title, and then realized that there was a lot more money in mixed martial arts and started putting all of his energy in there. I suppose for mixed martial arts, for combat sports, for you sitting in your position where you know all of the work that has been going on behind the scenes with EFC, are you surprised at how many South Africans are now interested in combat sports and have now kind of woken up to it?
No, it's been a slow burn, I've got to be honest with you. But then if you look at some of the ratings we were getting on the state broadcaster and on multi-choice networks quite a few years ago, they really were rather doing very well. I think it's, if you look at some of the other smaller regional promotions we have in South Africa, they struggle to get the sponsorship and trouble to get that news reach, into the newsrooms, into the papers, into the headlines, even though some of the action was actually non-stop and was high-quality fights going on in South Africa for many years. So I just think because it's still seen as a relatively violent sport, it's struggled to attract the blue-chip sponsors. The more established sporting codes have been able to grab for the past, decades, really. So it's been a slow burn, but I think with Dricus du Plessis' achievement, it kind of gives that idea of a rising tide raises all boats. There's a lot of South African medics, officials, referees working for international promotions for the past couple of years. So it's not just the fighters who have started to achieve, great things. It's really good for the industry in terms of the nutritionalists, everyone working behind the scenes, the media guys. So even though we're looking at Dricus du Plessis' fantastic achievement, for the past couple of years, we've been seeing this spread of South African expertise around the combat sports world as a result of South Africa adopting MMA many years ago. I just don't think it's been that popular in the public eye for a whole variety of reasons that I mentioned, and perhaps things are going to change now we have a UFC champ.
Well, it certainly seems that way. You've got the Minister of Sport congratulating a new UFC world champion in Dricus du Plessis, and lots of South African celebrities that I certainly didn't know were combat sports specialists or fans actually getting behind him. So it certainly does seem that this victory and what happened yesterday has kind of brought the sport to a lot more South Africans.
Yeah, I completely agree. And what I really enjoy about it is, quite some time ago, we would have to explain the rules a lot to the viewers in South Africa, go through the basics of MMA, the unified rules, why it's a relatively clean sport. And these days, I'm getting a lot more technical questions in some of the conversations. You, for example, Valen, talking about, the kickboxing record of Dricus du Plessis, and people starting to do their research and look into the fights from a technical point of view and start to realize what goes into the sport from a grappling point of view as well as a striking point of view. And I kind of seen the viewers in South Africa a little bit more informed and more to the point of what you're saying. People who in the past had always said, it's human cockfighting, or it's too violent, or it's too bloody for me. Watching Dricus du Plessis fight and asking me some very, very pointed questions about how it's scored, how the grappling works, how the submission move works, about the gloves, about a whole bunch of stuff. It's just brought this massive upswell of interest and fascination, but from all the right reasons. As a commentator, I sometimes watch the rugby or the cricket, and I really enjoy how some of the commentators are able to go into real good technical analysis without having to explain the basic rules of the sport. And I think we're moving away. I think the audience in South Africa is being just a little bit more informed about how the sport works. And it's absolute joy to really start to delve deep into some really rich content with MMA now in South Africa.
Speaking about being technical, the fact that Dricus du Plessis went a full 5 rounds, never having gone a full championship fight, that is incredible, because he certainly didn't tire at all in those last 2 rounds of the fight.
Yeah, again, before you asked me, Valen, about the scoring, it was contentious, but then it's one of those things where Dricus du Plessis has never left it in the hands of the judges before, hardly ever often. The thing about Dricus is he's got that farm strength. There's been fights in the past where he's been rocked and he's been hurt and he's been perhaps sometimes overpowered a little bit, but he just finds that will to win. He's still got a lot of power in his shots, even when he's hurt. He's got that Afrikaans thing about fast bait. He's got that thing where he bites down his mouth guard and comes forward. There was also the issue regarding, he does get a little bit touchy sometimes when you say his cardio isn't great. He did have an operation on his nose very recently, which enabled him to increase his oxygen intake by 20%. He's struggled with that for quite some time. And a lot of the American commentators will always say to him, you're gassing in the second round. And he does look like he gets tired. But he just comes back to his opponents every single time and puts them away. Yes, it was a surprise it went the distance. Strickland's really tough. He had a great jab.
Simon, I'm so sorry to interrupt you while you're busy getting going. Unfortunately, we're coming to the top of the hour, so I'm going to have to cut our conversation short. Good to have you to chat to as we unpack a historic victory for Dricus du Plessis.